Good morning, everybody. Today's topic of discussion is semen analysis. Let's start with some basics. What is the definition of semen? It's basically the concentrated suspension of spermatozoa, and it is mixed with fructose, and it's diluted by the fluid secretions from the accessory sex organs during ejaculation. What is the composition of semen? Mainly it comprises of two major components. Number one is the total number of spermatozoa, and number two is the total fluid volume. The total number of spermatozoa, it mainly reflects the sperm production and the patency of the testicular duct system. The total fluid volume, on the other hand, it reflects the secretory activity of the gland. The contribution to the semen volume. The most common organ which contributes the most is the seminal vesicle, which contributes to about 50%. Then we have the prostate, which contributes 40%, and then we have the testis and the epididymis, which contributes 10%. And lastly, we have the bulbourethral glands of Cowper, which contributes in the small amount. Okay, so now the seminal fluid, it mainly comprises of two parts, the seminal plasma and the cellular components. The seminal plasma consists of secretions from the seminal vesicles, which mainly comprises of 50% of the volume. The secretions are mainly alkaline in nature, and the major component is fructose. Then we have the prostate, which gives 40% of the volume. The secretions here are acidic in nature, and it contains citric acid, acid phosphatase, calcium, zinc, and proteolytic enzymes. Please note that the proteolytic enzymes here are basically responsible for the liquefaction of the semen. Then we have the bulbourethral glands of Cowper, which secretes the mucus. Now the cellular components. The four major cellular components are spermatozoa, epithelial cells, immature germ cells, and the leukocytes. Now, what are the indications for semen analysis? Most common is for investigation of the infertility. Then we have to check the effectiveness of vasectomy. How we do it? Basically, we have to do a semen analysis 12 weeks after the surgery or after 20 ejaculations of the surgery, and then we have to take two consecutive semen samples in order to check for the absence of sperm. Please note that even the presence of a single motile sperm indicates the failure of the surgery. It's also used in medico-legal cases to support or disprove paternity, for the selection of donor in case of artificial insemination, and for selection of ART, that is the assisted reproductive technique. Okay, so how it's being collected? What are the instructions that are being given to the patient? Number one, we have to tell him about the abstinence period, which is basically 2 to 7 days. What is the role of this abstinence period? If it is less than 2 days, then the sperm count will be low. And if it is more than 7 days, then the motility of the sperm count will be decreased. In cases of MLC, there is no such rule of period of abstinence. So the clear written or oral instructions concerning the sample collection should be given to the patient, and we should emphasize in order to prevent any kind of spillage of the semen sample, and the whole of the semen sample should be collected, because the first part of the semen sample is the most concentrated and it contains the major amount of spermatozoa. Now here is the container for collection. Proper label should be there on the sample on the container with the name and MRD, and the sample collector and the container should be clean, dry, and non-toxic, and it should have a wide mouth. And ideally, the sample collection should be done near the site of examination. But if it is done outside the lab, then it has to reach the lab within 1 hour of collection, and the container should be kept close to the body of the patient. Now the method of collection, preferably masturbation is suggested, but it can also be collected in a non-toxic condom, but it is not preferred because condoms contain spermicidal agent. Now all the semen samples are biohazardous and universal precautions should be followed. Now we also have to evaluate the completeness of the sample. By completeness, we mean it should be complete on the basis of quantity and quality. Quantity should be, the minimum volume should be 1.5 ml, and the quality has to be assessed by microscopy. Now the examination part. We will begin with the macroscopic examination. There are 5 major points under which we have to do this examination. Number one is the appearance, then we have viscosity, then semen volume, semen pH, and lastly the time for liquefaction. Okay, so appearance basically, normally the semen is homogeneous and it is opaque and it's grayish white in color. If it is less opaque, then it indicates a low sperm count. If it is yellow, then it indicates either the patient might be having jaundice or any other kind of on vitamins or any kind of drug. And if it is reddish brown, then it indicates the presence of RBCs. Here is a picture that how it looks. As you can see on the left side, there's a container containing the semen sample, and it is grayish white in color and it is homogeneous. And on the right side, this is how it looks when it is put in a petri dish. Okay, now the other physical character is the viscosity, which is a very important feature. Now, immediately after ejaculation, the semen sample is thick and viscous, and it usually liquefies within 1 hour. How do we check for this liquefaction? Basically, what we do is we aspirate it in a wide bore needle and we allow it to flow drop by drop in a container. Normally, if it has liquefied properly, it is supposed to fall drop by drop. But if it has not liquefied, then there will be formation of a thread which will be more than 2 centimeter in length, and the sample is considered to be abnormal then. Now, the high viscosity, it will interfere with the sperm motility, the sperm concentration, and it will also interfere with the detection of antibody-coated sperms and biochemical markers. Increase in viscosity will cause poor invasion of the cervical mucus as well. And if there is Then we have the semen pH. Normally, the semen pH is 7.2 to 8 after liquefaction. Now, please note that the semen pHs always need to be monitored after the liquefaction, not before it. Why is it alkaline? Why is it towards the alkaline side? Because as I said earlier, that mainly it comprises of the secretions of the seminal vesicle, and the secretions of seminal vesicle are alkaline in nature. Now, abnormal pH will, of course, affect the motility of the sperms. How do we see the pH? We spread a drop on a pH paper and we wait for the color to change. And then we compare it with the calibration strips. And also, if the semen sample is having low pH with azoospermia, it will indicate the obstruction of the ejaculatory duct or the absence of vas deferens. Now, liquefaction. Examination of semen should start immediately after liquefaction. The normal time for liquefaction is 15 minutes. It can extend up to 60 minutes, but not more than that. If it is more than 16 minutes, then it is said to be abnormal, and it's mainly because of lack of prostatic secretions. Why so? Because the prostatic secretions, as I told earlier, they contain proteolytic enzymes. Now, the induction of liquefaction. What we do is we add equal volume of physiological medium, dulbecose phosphate, buffered saline, followed by a repeated pipetting. We do mechanical mixing by blunt 18 to 19 gauge needle attached to a syringe, and then digestion is done by bromelain. Okay, now let's move on to the microscopic examination. First, there are also 5 points in this. First, we have aggregation and agglutination of the sperms. Then we have the sperm motility. Then we have sperm vitality. Then we have sperm count or the sperm number. And lastly, we have the morphology. Now, let's begin with aggregation and agglutination. So what do we mean by aggregation? It's basically the adherence of immotile spermatozoa to each other, or motile spermatozoa to either mucus strands or debris or non-sperm cells. As you can see in the picture. In the first picture, you can see that all the spermatozoas, they are clumped together, and in the central area, there is a debris. And in the second picture, you can see that there are some mucus strand present. In the third and the fourth picture, all these immotile spermatozoas, they are stuck to each other. Then we have agglutination. What is agglutination? It's basically the motile spermatozoa sticking to each other. In aggregation, we had immotile as well as motile spermatozoas, but in case of agglutination, only the motile spermatozoas, they are sticking to each other. So there are certain grades of it, and it can be defined also on the basis of the site of attachment. Site of attachment are head to head, tail to tail, tail tip to tail tip, tangled, and mixed. So now, what are the degrees of agglutination? There are basically 4 degrees of agglutination. In grade 1, there can be seen agglutinates containing less than 10 spermatozoas, and many free spermatozoas can be seen. In grade 2, there will be 10 to 50 spermatozoas per agglutinate, and free spermatozoas will be seen here also. In case of grade 3, we will see large agglutinates containing more than 50 spermatozoas, and some free spermatozoas are still visible. In case of grade 4, all the spermatozoas are in the agglutinate form, and there are no free spermatozoas present, and all the agglutinates are interconnected as well. Now, why does this agglutination occur? It basically occurs because of the presence of anti-sperm antibodies, and it will affect the sperm motility and concentration assessment as well. Okay, now let's know about the sperm motility. Now, sperm motility is basically of three types: progressive motility, non-progressive motility, and immotility. So, what do you mean by progressive motility? As the name suggests, it is progressive and motile. Progressive means it's changing its position from one place to another, and motile means it's moving. So, it's changing its position as well as it's moving. It will be seen moving either in linear directions, or it can be seen moving in large circles. Then we have the non-progressive motility. What does we mean by that? Non-progressive, as the name suggests, it and motile. So it's not changing its position as such from one place to another. So it will be seen moving in its own area, or it can be either by flagellar movements, or it can be seen moving in small circles. And then lastly, immotility, which is no movement at all. Okay, only the sperms which are having rapid progressive motility, they can only penetrate and fertilize the ovum. The lower reference limit, which is very important, the total motility, which is progressive and non-progressive motility, should be 40%, and the progressive motility should be 32%. How do we see the sperm motility? First, we prepare a wet preparation. Then we wait for the sample to stop drifting. We examine it under 20x or 40x. Basically, what we do is we take a clean slide, we put a drop of the liquefied semen sample on it, and then we cover it with a cover slip. We have to then we observe it under 20x or 40x. We have to evaluate at least 200 spermatozoas, and we have to note the number of spermatozoa in each motility category. And please remember that we have to note only the intact spermatozoas. Now, what is then we have to calculate the total motility, which is progressive motility plus the non-progressive motility. Now, here is a short video. So in this video, as you can see, this is how it will look under the scanner. Then this is how it will look under 20x. Here you can see some of them are progressively motile, with those who are moving in a linear fashion. In this picture, you can see the motile sperms as well as the sperms which are moving only on their own areas. Here in this sperm, all of the sperms are motile, but in the central area, you can see the immotile spermatozoa as well. On the upper side, you can see in this slide.
Progressively motile. I mean, they are changing their position. They are going from one position to another. And this is rapidly progressive.
And in this picture, you can see round cells and epithelial cells and WBCs along with the spermatozoas. In this picture as well, you can see other cellular elements that are normally seen along with the spermatozoas, the round cells, the epithelial cells, the leukocytes. In this slide, this spermatozoa in the center, it's showing progressive movement, but its progression is very faint. Here, both of them are non-progressive because they are not changing their position. They are only moving in their own area, and they are showing some flagellar movements only. Now let's start with sperm vitality. What does sperm vitality usually mean? It basically calculates the proportion of live sperms and those sperms which are having an intact cell membrane. It can be determined by two methods. Number one is the dye exclusion method, and number two is the hypoosmotic swelling test. Now, what are the principles? Basically, in dye exclusion method, it's basically done in those spermatozoas which are having a damaged plasma membrane. What it does, that the impermeant stain, which is basically the eosin nigrosin stain, it penetrates these damaged plasma membrane spermatozoas and stains them. Then we have the next test, which is the hypoosmotic swelling test, and this test is done on those spermatozoas which are having intact cell membrane, and they will swell when they are kept in hypotonic solutions. Now, when is this sperm vitality being performed? It is done in those samples whose progressive motility is less than 40%. Now, what happens when the percentage of dead cells is less than the percentage of immotile spermatozoas? So when the immotile spermatozoas are large in numbers, what does that indicate? If those immotile spermatozoas, all of them are immotile, but they are all viable, they will indicate that there is a structural defect in the flagellar structure. And if they are both immotile as well as non-viable, that means they are dead, then it indicates there is some kind of epididymal pathology. So the sperm vitality should be assessed within 30 to 60 minutes after collection. The normal lower reference limit is 58%. What are the steps in dye exclusion method? We take 1 drop of semen and we add 1 drop of eosin nigrosin stain to it. Then we incubate it for 30 seconds. Then a smear is made and it's air dried. And then we examine it under oil immersion, that is 100x. At least 200 spermatozoas has to be examined. Those which are live, they will remain unstained, as the eosin nigrosin stain will not be able to penetrate them, and those which are dead sperms, they will be stained pink by the eosin stain and the background will be stained by nigrosin stain. Then we have to calculate the percentage of viable sperms. This is how it will look in case of bright field optics. Okay, so now what sperm count? What are the exact numbers? The total sperm number is 39 into 10 to the power 6. The total sperm number per ejaculate is calculated by sperm concentration multiplied by semen volume. The sperm concentration is equal to 15 into 10 to the power 6, and sperm concentration is equal to total sperm number divided by the volume of the semen. Now, how do we calculate how do we count the sperms? We take 1 ml of liquefied semen in a graduated tube and we add 19 ml of diluting fluid to it, which is basically sodium bicarbonate formalin diluting fluid. Please note that the dilution factor is 1:20. Then we charge it in the Newbar's chamber. We put a cover slip over it and then we count the number of sperms in the 4 large corner squares. Please note that if the number of sperms are less, then we have to count all the 9 boxes. Minimum 200 spermatozoas has to be counted. Now there's a formula in order to calculate the concentration, which is sperm count multiplied by the dilution factor multiplied by 1000 divided by the number of squares connected multiplied by volume of each square, which ultimately gives us sperm counted multiplied by 50,000 if we put the respective values. Like in place of dilution factor, we have to put 20 multiplied by 1000, then divided by number of squares counted, which in this case is 4, then multiplied by volume of each square, which is 0.1 cc. And the report will be expressed in millions per ml. How do we prepare the diluting fluid? Just in short, basically what we do is we take sodium bicarbonate and we add formalin to it, and then we have to store it at 4 degrees Celsius. So this is basically a table in order to determine the required dilution factor on the basis of the number of spermatozoas which are seen in 40x as well as 20x field. The sperm morphology. It can be detected by 2 methods. Number one is feathering, which is done for the undiluted semen samples, and the other is the pipette method, which is done for the washed sample. So feathering, in case of feathering, what we do is we take a slide, we put a drop of the undiluted semen, and then we take another clean slide and glide the semen sample over it. On the other hand, the pipette method is done on the wash sample. By wash sample, I mean that we have to take 0.5 ml of the semen sample, then we have to add 10 ml of normal saline to it, and then we centrifuge it at 800 rpm. And the pipette, why is it called pipette method? Because here we don't use a slide to glide it, we use a pasteur pipette in order to glide the semen sample over the clean glass slide, and it's done for wash samples. In order to see, we have to first air dry those slides and we have to fix it and stain it with Papanicolaou stains or HNE stains, eosin nigrosin stain or rose Bengal toluidine stain. And then we have to examine it under oil immersion field and we have to examine 200 spermatozoas. Okay, now let's take a look on the normal sperm morphology. As we all know that the spermatozoas mainly consist of head, neck, a middle piece, a principal piece and an end piece. The head is basically smooth and it's regularly contoured and it's oval in shape. The acrosomal region comprises about 40 to 70% of the head area, and there are normally no vacuoles present in it. And the acrosomal region consists of the glycolytic enzymes and the proteins which are important for the penetration of the ovum, the zona pellucida of the ovum, and it also helps in the separation of the corona radiata cells. And then we have the middle piece, which is mainly which consists of the mitochondria, and it plays a role in the motility of the sperms, and it's slender and it's regular and it's of the same length as the head. And there's also neck, which basically facilitates the attachment of the tail region to the head. Then the principal piece is also there, which is the longest piece of the tail, and it is around 10 times longer than the length of the head, and it's uniform in caliber, and it is thinner than the middle piece. Both the middle piece and the principal piece, they are made up of axonemes. Lower reference limit for normal form is 4%, and the total number of spermatozoas per ejaculate is the total number of spermatozoa in the ejaculate multiplied by the number of normal forms. Here you can see some pictures of the abnormal sperm morphology. Let's start one by one. Number one is the head defects. In the first picture, you can see that it's tapered. Then we have the pyriform. Then we have round with acrosome, without acrosome, and then we have a small acrosome. And then we have amorphous forms. Then we have vacuolations, and then there is a small acrosomal area. So basically, if there is any fault in the head, in the acrosomal area, then the sperm will not be able to penetrate the ovum, which will cause a faulty fertilization. And if the head is very big, then as the head contains DNA as well, so there will be defect in the DNA condensation too. Then we have the neck and mid-piece defects. We can see there is bent neck, there is asymmetrical neck, there is thick insertion, and there is thin insertion. As I said earlier, the mid-piece contains the mitochondria, which affects the motility. So any kind of defect in the middle piece will cause defective motility of the spermatozoas. Then we have the tail defect. There can be short tail, bent tail, or coiled tail. And then we have excess residual cytoplasm. Normally, it is more than 1/3. Okay, in this picture, we can see the first arrow is showing you immature tapered head. Usually it is oval in shape, round to oval. Then we have an immature macro head, which is larger than the normal size. Then we have the immature triple head. And lastly, we have the immature duplicates. There are some other cellular elements which are seen. The first orange arrow is showing you the abnormal spermatozoon. The second one is showing you the macrophage. Then the third one is just showing you a cytoplasm. Then we have the spermatid. Then the degenerating spermatids. Then we have cytoplasm. Then the orange arrow is showing you the dividing spermatocytes. And lastly, the degenerating spermatids. Here you can also see some other cellular elements like monocytes, polymorphs, and normal, as well as lastly the pyriforms. Okay, now let's move on to some of the tests. There is a test known as the fructose test, which plays a very important role. This is also known as the resorcinol method. How do we do it? We basically take 5 ml of resorcinol agent, which is an organic compound with a benzene ring. We add 5 ml or 5 drops or 0.5 ml of seminal fluid to it, and we heat the mixture and we brought it to boil. Then what is the interpretation? If the fructose is present in the sample, then it will show you cherry red color after 8 to 10 minutes of cooling. And if the fructose is absent, then cherry red color is not seen. Now, what is the principle? Basically, the hydroxymethyl furfuryl formed from fructose in acid medium, it will react with the resorcinol and it will give you a cherry red color. Resorcinol here, it will act as a reducing agent. Now, what does absence of fructose indicates? It basically indicates, as I told earlier, that fructose is a part of the seminal vesicles. So its absence will obviously indicate the obstruction of the proximal seminal vesicles or the lack of seminal vesicles. In case of azoospermia, that means when there is no sperm in the semen, then and as well as the fructose is absent, then it is due to obstruction of the ejaculatory duct or due to absence of the vas deferens. On the other hand, if there is azoospermia, but the fructose is present, then it's because then it is because the failure of the testis is not able to produce the sperms, because here the fructose is present, just the sperms are not there. Okay, so now there are some optional investigations which are not done routinely. Number one, there is assessing the peroxidase positivity to differentiate between the immature cells from the leukocytes. Then we have testing for antibody coating of spermatozoa. There are 3 tests: mixed antiglobulin reaction test, which is further divided into direct MAR test and indirect MAR test. Then we have the direct immunobead test and indirect immunobead test. There are also biochemical assays for accessory sex organ function, which measures zinc, fructose, and neutral glucosidase. Now here in the first test, which is used for the assessing the peroxidase positivity, why is it important? Because normally we see many round cells in the slide. These round cells, they can be either immature spermatids or they can be WBCs as well. So how do we differentiate it? There's basically a test which is known as the ENDS test, which is based on myeloperoxidase staining. What it does, it basically indicates the degree of leukocytospermia, that is the presence of the WBCs in the semen sample. If the WBC count is more than 1 million per ml of semen, then it is considered to be as leukocytospermia, which indicates any kind of infection. And then we have the antibody coating of the spermatozoa. Here there is mixed, the MAR test is basically used to detect the IgG and IgA antibodies. And then we have the immunobead test, in which immunobeads are used, which are nothing but basically the plastic particles which are coated with the IgG and IgA immunoglobulins. And these antibodies are used to detect the antibodies that are present on the surface of the spermatozoa. So, what we can derive from these testings for antibody coating is that if these tests show a result of more than 50% of the 50% of the spermatozoas are showing the presence of antibodies, that means the test is abnormal. Then we have interaction between the spermatozoa and cervical mucus. Basically, these three tests are the sperm function test. So number one is the postcoital test, which is the in vivo test. Then we have the in vitro simplified slide test, and then we have the capillary tube test. In the postcoital test, basically what we do is we aspirate the semen sample, we aspirate the cervical mucus from the patient, from the female, and it's basically done 2 to 12 hours after sexual intercourse, because at that time the cervical mucus is very thin. And then we see the movement of the sperm in that cervical mucus. The normal interpretation of this test is if the sperms are seen moving normally and they are showing a progressive motility, and if the cervical mucus is drying up in a fern like pattern, then it indicates the normal result. And in case of capillary tube method, what we do is we take the seminal fluid, which is free of spermatozoa, and we take in a capillary tube, and we see the distance traveled by the spermatozoas inside that capillary tube. Now, let's have a look on the computer-aided sperm analysis, which is also known as CASA. What is the principle? Basically, here we use fluorescent DNA stains, which will stain the tail of the spermatozoas, and this algorithm will allow us to determine the sperm concentration as well as the progressive spermatozoas. It can also measure the sperm motility. What is the advantage? Is high on precision, obviously, and it gives us a quantitative data on the kinematic parameters. Now, it also gives us an assessment of the morphology, and it is a significant predictor for pregnancy and fertilization growth in vitro. Here is a picture of the computer-aided sperm analyzer. Now, internal quality control, it's basically, it will monitor the precision and it indicates when the assay may be faulty. Different assessments are sensitive to different type of errors. It will include IQC materials in the laboratory's regular workload, and it will monitor the result for these materials using some quality control charts. Then we have external quality control. It will also monitor the assay results. Both these IQC and EQC are complementary processes, and they will compare between the two labs. The two samples are provided to you. You plot a Uden plot. Then the extent of difference between the lab results can also be observed by scatter and distribution of the plotted values. Now, what are the causes of out control values? Some technical error can be there: inadequate mixing of the sample, poor technique, instrument variation, change in the procedures of laboratory, change in equipment, inadequate training. Now, these are some important lower reference limit for semen characteristic. The semen volume is 1.5 ml. The total sperm number is 39 into 10 to the power 6. The sperm concentration is 15 into 10 to the power 6. The sperm morphology is 4%. Sperm vitality is 58%. The total motility should be 40%. The progressive motility should be 32%. And the pH should be 7.2. The other thing that has to be remembered is the peroxidase positive leukocytes and the MAR test and immunobead test. Both the antibody tests, they should show, normally it should show less than 50%, and the seminal fructose should be more than 13. Now, these are some important nomenclatures that we should know. Aspermia, it means that there is no semen or no or retrograde ejaculation. Asthenozoospermia, if they split the word, astheno means motility. So there will be the progressive percentage of progressively motile spermatozoa will be low. Asthenoteratozoospermia, astheno means motility, terato means the morphological forms. So astheno, so there will be low motile sperms and there will be low normal morphologically normal sperms. Azoospermia means there is no sperms in the ejaculate. Hemospermia, as the name suggests, hemo means RBC, so there will be RBCs in the sperms. Then we have Leucospermia, which is also known as leukocytospermia or pyrospermia, which indicates the presence of leukocytes in the sperms. Oligoasthenoteratozoospermia. Let's split the word again. Oligo, it means the total number of sperms will be low. Astheno means the motility will be low. Terato means normally morphological forms will be low. All of them will be below the normal reference values. Oligoteratozoospermia. Oligo means low number of spermatozoa, and teratozoospermia means the morphologically normal spermatozoas will be low in number. Oligozoospermia, as I mentioned earlier, total number of spermatozoas will be low. Teratospermia means low number of morphologically normal forms. So this is how basically a report looks. On the left side, you can see we have to note the name and age and gender, MRD number. We also create a ID number, which is nothing but basically we take the first letter of the name, of the full name of the patient. Then on the right side, this is how a report looks. There will be period of abstinence, time of sample collection, time of sample examination, liquefaction time, sample completeness. Then we do the physical examination, in which we measure the volume, color, appearance, viscosity. Then we write the microscopic examination. We see the total sperm concentration, total sperm count per ejaculate, which is in millions, total motility, then motility assessment, which is linear progressive motility, non-progressive and immotile. Then the total motility after 2 hours is also measured. Then we see the morphology, in which we have normal forms, abnormal forms, round cells, epithelial cells, and RBC, and lastly the impression. This is how the basic report looks nowadays. On the left side, you can see the non-MLC, and the right side, we can see the MLC report. Both the reports are similar to that I showed you in the previous slide. The only difference is that in case of MLCs, we write down the name of the police constable in the bottom of the report. That's it. Thank you.